Good evening, and welcome to another episode of Vulture's Rainbow Theatre. Tonight, we move on to Chapter 13 and 14 of The Guns of Sotol Flats. And now, let us begin. The Guns of Sotol Flats, Chapter 13. The Darkness Moves. In the infinite depths of the dark she waited, spinning her webs in the great hole at the bottom of the canyon which was her home, spinning her webs and drawing down to her a constant stream of victims called to her by the very force of her will. They streamed in from the dimension where she lived and had her throne, and they streamed in from other worlds, other dimensions, where the call of the dark was just as inexorable and immediate as it was in her own land of forever night. Many she devoured, for her hunger was unrelenting and constant, but many she kept alive on the tether of her will, and these she called for to serve her or sent forth in the constant hunt to procure more places and more victims upon which and upon whom she could feed. Emerging from her hole onto the canyon floor, she could behold, with her uncountable host of eyes, the wheeling flocks of enslaved souls transformed into great shantoks, bat-like creatures of enormous size, in a constant and unending orbit of flight around her lair, waiting their turns to do her service or to feed themselves willingly into the razor-like mandibulae with which she grasped and gobbled her prey. Near her, hunched among the mountains which formed the upper walls of the canyon in which she lived, her companion waited, in constant attendance, a mountainous demon with great wings stretching the span of a storm front, a watchful creature whose head was covered with a web-like veil she had woven for him, a veil which hid the horror of his face so that she could use and control the terror it caused as a tool of dominance and a sign of her irresistible power. He was her mouthpiece and the captain of her numberless hosts. As the great shantoks flew in her world of forever night, so flew other creatures in thrall to her servants, her priestesses who served her in other worlds and other dimensions, and sometimes they mingled, the shantoks and the flying creatures of those other worlds. Sometimes they mingled and called to one another, meeping and gibbering news with which they had been sent. In this way, Yut, the Queen of Darkness, could gain intelligence of the worlds where her servants waited on her, and could make her will known to them. And so it was that the vultures of Zopilota, flying in circles around the Huesos Mountains day and night, mingled with the shantoks in the darkness under the stars now and again, the shantoks carrying messages from the Bride of Darkness to Yut, and bringing the orders of Yut to the Bride of Darkness. Yut had set her sights on the western territories of the Republic, had determined that they would be enveloped in darkness and brought from the world where they currently existed into the land of forever night, where she could feed on its inhabitants at will. The conquest was now to begin, and mounted men with covered faces and blind eyes from the state of Alhambra were thundering on across the plains and deserts, or riding the iron horse on the rail line that led from the coast to the territory of Navaja. When they arrived, they would meet with the mounted and armed and sightless population of Kildare, where sunlight had been banished, and an impenetrable cloud kept the city under a veil of darkness. There were rumors of allies gathering against her, their new queen, and she would move against them with the troops she now had before they could organize and oppose her. Billy awoke in a sweat. He sat up in his cot in one of the tents of Senator Gallegos' army, his mind still reeling from nightmare. As he had done every night in recent memory, so he had done during this night before, finding himself wheeling around an invisible hole in the impenetrable darkness of a canyon. A giant bat-like creature in the service of the goddess of darkness, alive only at her pleasure, kept on the tether of her irresistible will. What had been different in the nightmare from which he had just awakened is that will suddenly became sharper, more focused, and Billy felt that he was being spoken to individually, pointedly, that it was time to decide where his allegiance lay. He and Eduardo could either serve the goddess and join the forces of darkness, or she could call their souls down into the hole which served as her abode, and make them present themselves as food to her slavering, razor-sharp mandibulae. A choice must be made. They could serve her, their benefactor, or continue their mission given to them by the spirits of the dead to organize resistance and try to stop her. Now Billy, awake, realized that he and Eduardo had taken a gift from this creature and were, in effect, planning to repay that generosity with betrayal. How, Billy wondered, could he not have seen before that this contradiction was inevitable, that in receiving from Yut the gift of unerring aim, he was now obligated to employ it in Her Majesty's dark service? He considered awakening Eduardo to start the conversation they must have, but when he reached over to tap his friend's shoulder, something in him hesitated. At that moment he saw, under the tent flap which served as a door, the shadows of 2 feet. "Mr. Ryder," a voice whispered. "Mr. Ryder, are you awake?" "Yeah," said Billy. "What is it?" "Visitante, señor." Billy fumbled for the nearby table, found the matches, and lit his lamp. He looked up in wonderment to see 3 men he thought he'd never see again: Santiago, Yegua Roja, and Eats Crow. "Well, I'll be damned," Billy said to them. "Maybe I ain't awake yet." "You know, Billy, I'm kind of sort of glad I didn't kill you when I had the chance," said Santiago. "You ain't going to believe this, but I'm here for your help." "You're here for my—" Billy did something he had not done in a long time. He laughed. Chapter 14, Trouble Behind the Lines. When General Billington received the communique, he could hardly believe it. An alliance of the Squotil Nation with El Calvo's raiders. That was something he had not expected. "Damn it," he said to Reno, who was in the planning tent with him at the moment. "We were going to divide and conquer, one enemy at a time." He let his eye scan over the tactical map hung against the rear wall of the white canvas military tent. "Where the hell is Waycross?" he asked. "Be here in a moment, sir," Reno answered. "He's issuing orders to the scouts. Our situation has changed." "You can damn well say that again," Billington muttered. He looked again at the map and said, "If we stay in our current position, we could end up caught in a pincher between the Northern Squotil and this new alliance of redskins and bean-eaters. I am not a happy soldier. When Waycross gets here, let's plot out a new position. It looks to me like some kind of tactical retreat is in order. The government is not going to be pleased." "Well, sir," replied Reno, "we could simply wait on advising the capital about our movements until we have a better grasp of the situation. Events are fluid right now." "That's good, Reno. Events are fluid right now. I'm going to use that if we start getting inquiries during the next few days. All right, then, let's do that. We keep mum until we're ready either to report good news or something that sounds like positive action." Billington left the tent to get some fresh air and light up one of those good Tolixcan puros he'd brought up to his headquarters from Villarreal. These cigars had come from an especially good batch, reportedly grown in the Tolixcan state of Colua, Senator Gallegos' own stomping grounds. Reno's recommendations to withhold communications would buy him some time, of course, but the question now is what would happen after their tactical retreat. What positive action could they take that was likely to end in success within a week's time? He considered the fact that Captain Spain was now on his way, with the 14th Cavalry Regiment. That would almost double their numbers. But where and how to deploy the forces he already had and those he was about to receive? Just as his mind was on the cusp of a possible solution, a voice interrupted him. It was the breathless voice of a scout covered with dust, leading an exhausted horse. "Sir," the man said through his brushy mustache, dripping with sweat. "General, sir, you need to read this immediately." Billington took the enveloped message from him without a word and tore it open. It was from Spain. "To General Billington with compliments. Sir, there has been a change in our situation. I am currently moving north toward Kildare, on reports that the territorial capital has been taken over by a posse of masked men. I received a telegraph message from President Blount to take emergency action and restore the city to the authority of the Republic. He is calling for all troops, including yours, sir, to disengage from action along the border and gather southwest of Kildare along the railroad line at Molino Vargas Station. I am sorry to be the one to convey these orders to you, sir, with all respect, but the President knew I had the telegraph station. Your servant, Captain Spain. P.S. We have been ordered to rendezvous with you before the 15th of this month. That gives us both a week." "By the suffering and bleeding saints," spat out Billington. He and his men didn't have much time.
You have been listening to Vulture's Rainbow Theatre with your host, Damon Vulture. Remember that Vulture's Rainbow Theatre is brought to you by Vulture's Rainbow, your mobile home of dark art. Check on our page on Facebook for future opportunities to buy dark art. And now, we wish you a good night and dark dreams.